Hi, I'm Jeff Ray, your host for Economic Outlook. Welcome to our program. We hope you enjoy the show. Please make plans each week to join us as we discuss the region's most important economic development initiatives with a panel of experts. We're wrapping up another season of Economic Outlook. George and I have taken you to all corners of the region for an inside look at the people and the projects driving economic growth in the region. We're sitting down to reflect on some of our favorite shows and to talk about some of the great things happening in the region coming up on Economic Outlook. We've welcomed dozens of guests to the studio and taken you out and introduced you to some great people and projects in the region. My co-host and I, George Lepin-Yotis, are reflecting on this past season of Economic Outlook. Welcome, George.
Thank you, Jeff. Thanks for having me back in the studio.
George, I teased in promo and some others that you and I rarely get a chance to be together because you're in the field, I'm in the studio and such. So I've really enjoyed these chances in the past couple of years where we've had a chance to reflect on our season a little bit.
Yeah, me too. I think it's such a great opportunity to talk with you and talk about some good stories, but B, more importantly, be in the air conditioning where I'm not sweating or avoiding traffic.
Yes, exactly. We do a great job in the field. I'm grateful for the partnership that we have and look forward to catching up a little bit today. So George, maybe frame a reference just to start people. I like to remind folks, this isn't your day job or my day job. So what's George do for a living again?
So I am an attorney with Krieg DeVault. I'm a corporate attorney by trade, represent corporate clients throughout the region and municipal clients. And enjoy doing that. I was born and raised in Bridgman, Michigan, and practice here in South Bend, Mishawaka. And that's what I do for a living. But you're right, this is not our day job.
Right, no, awesome. And George, you do a great job. You're still a terrific connection for us in Southwest Michigan. It's a really important part of the region, and we really have strived to try to get to all corners of the region. And so appreciate you helping open some of those doors across the region for us. So George, let's start back with, you've been at this a couple years now. Talk to us about what first excited you to join PBS Michiana, the WNIT team here.
Yeah, it was a unique opportunity for me. I had never done anything like this before, but as a lawyer, we are trained in inquiry. Being curious has always been an affliction of mine. And so when I was approached by then executive producer of the station to potentially be your co-host and work with you on the show, I actually was excited about the opportunity. And surprisingly, 9 years later, I'm still excited to do it. It's such a great opportunity to get out, to talk to people, to see things that I wouldn't otherwise get to see, especially with the field component. It takes me into factories, behind the scenes, down into dugouts, into construction sites, and places where many of us drive by every day and go, I wonder what that is. So it's been a great partnership, and I just can't say enough about the work you do, though, because I think we talk about connections, and the connections that you bring just make that possible. So you're being so plugged in and being president of the chamber, representing businesses throughout the area, I hope they feel we do a good job.
I think so. We get some wonderful feedback. I think people are excited about joining us and diving a little deeper. No offense to mainstream media. Mainstream media, though, gets usually about a minute or two to tell the story. We get 25 usually to tell the story. And so this nice mix of in the studio and out in the field, I think is a great thing. Talk for a quick second. PBS Michiana, WNIT, celebrating 50 years a little bit. Just mention that for a second and what that means to the community.
Well, it's funny because I have a go-to line when I'm out in the field talking to people, and that is that this is a public service that we do to help showcase the positive stories of our community. Our community is a very unique community. I've said it before to you here at this table, we are a regional powerhouse. But without the region, we may not be quite the powerhouse. And you can see that in things like the vibrancy of the UP Mall. Where many malls are dying, the UP Mall still stands on its own, and that's largely because it serves such a large community up into Michigan, east and west of St. Joseph County, even south of St. Joseph County. I think that for 50 years, WNIT has been a big part of that, and shows like this, doing local shows, doing shows that are focused on who we are as a community is so important.
It is, and it's been neat for me to watch the last couple of years as that portfolio has grown, not only on the economic side, education, a lot of kids programming, politically speaking, some terrific programming there, and we get a chance to watch all of them, and we're grateful to be part of the PBS Michiana team and excited to celebrate. I encourage folks to watch the documentary about
That's
the
right.
50 years, which is was a tremendous piece that reflects on that. So, George, let's focus more on this season, the job, kind of the local economy, what's going on, this kind of stuff. So we send you out each year, some of the same places, some new places and stuff. So let's start reflecting a little bit on this year and maybe a favorite place or two that you might have had a chance to go out and visit while you're doing a field shoot.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you start always with the South Bend Cubs. It's always a fun time to go to the ballpark and see what they've got cooking. And it's not always just hot dogs. There's always a lot of activity at the park under the leadership of the Berlin Group and Joe Hart. They've really taken so many strides forward into becoming a world-class sporting organization, which in places like South Bend, is a challenge. I mean, the University of Notre Dame has done it right for so many years that some of the other organizations got eclipsed by that powerhouse. But I think the Cubs really have done a great job of standing on their own. So it's always fun to go see that. They've got expansion plans. They're going to add an upper deck. They're going to add some more amenities to the ballpark. They're going to add, I believe, some additional suite type opportunities. It's a great place for businesses throughout the area to host events. And so that's always fun.
Yeah, and let me maybe build on that for a second, because as you mentioned, the stadium, there's a $50 million planned expansion that will begin the day after this season starts. And so to hear Joe and Andrew talk a little bit about what that expansion will mean to the community. Right now, the attraction brings in over 300,000 people a year to downtown. And so to really build on that, expand the stadium to 10,000 seats is pretty exciting. So we always enjoy kind of that catch up. We usually go out there, and you get the fun part of that. You get to go to the stadium.
Yeah.
I usually get to wear the hardware, though.
I didn't get to wear the hardware.
Okay.
You got that privilege.
Yeah.
But I tell you what I do is, we've been blessed. Every time we seem to go to the ballpark, it's a beautiful day. As a matter of fact, I think a couple years ago we went in February, and it was a 60-degree February day. So the ballpark always seems to bless us.
You're always complaining about it's cold and windy and wet. And,
well, you asked me
you
asked for my favorite, and that was one of my favorites.
All right, no, that's good. So let's stay in the sports realm for a second, because we sent you out to the Mishawaka Sports Complex, the field house this year. That's kind of youth sports. What's going on in that space is pretty phenomenal. Mention your visit out that way.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I met with your successor, Mayor Wood. And for those of our viewers that don't remember that far back, you were mayor of Mishawaka at a point in time, the youngest mayor of Mishawaka.
Yes, a long time ago.
But the foundation that you built out there really has shown through in Mishawaka. Mishawaka is taking strides to reinvent all parts of the community. And so they looked at the far east side. They have that Capitol Avenue corridor, and Mayor Wood and his team realized that that could be a real nice entry into Mishawaka, and are capitalizing on it. So that sports complex, from what I understand, is going to be the largest of its kind in the country, according to the developer, with indoor facilities for a multitude of sports, and then plans for potentially bringing in outdoor fields and such. But the real key is the indoor facility for northern communities, where soccer games, basketball games, volleyball games can all be played indoors under a massive roof.
Yeah, it's exciting. People have often wondered what this huge building is, because it is pretty massive.
Yeah.
And so scheduled to open August of 24, so
That's
just
right.
a little bit later this summer. I got an early suggestion for a field shoot next year: George versus Jeff, one-on-one on the pickleball courts in the new sports complex.
Done.
What do you think? Just
I think
write down the
I'll
idea.
write that right here.
Think about it over the summer,
Pickle
and we'll see. So,
ball.
Yep.
First, I have to learn how to play.
Okay, all right, good. Oh, then I got an advantage, so good. So George, let's talk about a few others. So, because within days probably of when this episode is going to air, another new large attraction is ready to open out on the west side of South Bend. Tell us a little bit about your trip out to the west side of South Bend.
Yeah, so I'm assuming you're talking about Chaco Dino World.
Yes.
Mark Tunner and his team developed one of the most unique attractions I think I've ever been to, and it will ring true as a true Willy Wonkian type experience. Everything from a chocolate factory and a exhibit on the history of chocolate making to the other side of the massive complex being Indiana's Dinosaur Museum. Mark has long had a passion for paleontology and dinosaurs, and he brought his professional passion and his personal passion together and built a massive attraction that had a lot of partners and is going to be a unique place for families to stop. It is geographically correctly located. I mean, it's right in between Indianapolis, coming up 31 and heading north into Michigan, Detroit, some of the tourist areas up along the Michigan coast. So I think Mark's excited. I believe he's opening here late June, or that's the target. We toured the museum. It was in the middle stages of being put together and had a lot of exciting things, including places where kids can dig for their own fossils and their own dinosaur bones. Had so many, 2 or 3 different dining options, and is, like I said, conveniently located in an intersection that I think will end up being one of our premier West Side intersections.
It's great. I'm back in the field shoot idea. Next year, should they bring us both back?
Yes.
How about George out digging for dinosaur fossils, or for fossils and dinosaur bones out in the back?
Is it going to be a versus? Are you going to be there too?
No, just you.
Just me,
you.
okay.
Yeah. We're going to send you out on a cold fall day and have you digging for dinosaur bones. So.
I think it's indoors, so I'll be in good shape.
Perfect. You're in good shape. Good.
But don't pay Mark not to plant them. I think someone has to put them in there.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. All right. Well, I'm full of ideas today.
I'm loving it.
Good. All right, so let's just pop around a few more that I think have been. So one thing we've tried to do is highlight different parts of the region, right? So we went to Southwest Michigan, went to Elkhart County, we go to Marshall County, some of that. So talk a little bit about just a few of your visits to that. Like we tend to be a little South Bend focused sometimes because of just its largest county and a lot of activity happening there. But what's happening in the counties around us is critical as well too. So mention a little bit about just a few of those things, whether it be your trip to Southwest Michigan or Elkhart or Marshall County.
Well, it's funny because as I was looking through the list of episodes, I did notice that we did spend a lot of time in and around St. Joe County and South Bend this season, which isn't always abnormal. I mean, that seems to be a big part of the show, but normally we spend more time in Elkhart and Marshall County. I think that as I thought about it, and Berrien County, of course, my home, as I think about it, I just think there was so much activity in St. Joe County this year. We talked about Ready 2.0, and that drove a lot of activity in and around here. And I think that that's really something that South Bend, Mishawaka have been taking major steps to reinvent major things, right? I mean, one of our last episodes was the Madison Lifestyle District, which is going to be a complete reinvention of an entire neighborhood. That's not something you see every day. Right. But we did make it to Marshall County, where we've often been, and we've seen a lot of progressive growth down in a small community, and one that's some growth from back in the days when they were doing spec industrial buildings to redoing the Ready Theater downtown Plymouth. The Reese Theater, I'm sorry.
With Ready funds.
Yeah,
so
got a little confused.
I know, that's right.
But it definitely, I mean, that theater has been a catalyst for that community and has become its icon, its Golden Dome, if you will. And they're proud of it, and you can tell. And I think that's the type of things that we're seeing in all of our communities, where they're galvanizing around monumental projects to reinvent the way they live, the places they live, and their community spaces.
Yeah, and let's hit on Elkhart a little bit, because I think historically we sent you several times, in particular downtown, and to look at Lerner Theater and to look at riverfront redevelopment, a lot of new housing going down there. Mention just Elkhart real quick.
Yeah, well, we went over to Elkhart and we spoke, on one occasion, we spoke with your counterpart in Elkhart County, the president of the regional chamber over there. I told him he was my favorite chamber president.
Of course,
He's a great guy, and he really does seem to have a pulse of that community, which I think chambers of commerce have to do in order to be successful. But I think Elkhart, a couple of years ago, you saw a major investment in its downtown with the aquatic center and that lifestyle district right by the river there, and some major investment in the Hotel Elkhart. We did an episode on that. And so this year, as we looked over there, it's been a different year for Elkhart County. Their industry has been a little bit down. I mean, the RV industry is still doing well, but not at its major peaks and heights that it once had. But it was exciting to see how they are addressing issues in some of the collar areas, Goshen, for instance, with some housing opportunities coming up, and how, and I think that's something that our other counties, Marshall as well, talked about, how housing is the next important hill that they have to climb and conquer, especially as we're seeing massive investments in almost all of our viewing counties.
Yeah, we focused completely on housing in one of our shows, just for that fact that everybody's talking about it. So, if you go all the way back to the crisis of 2008, I think it is, we're still recovering from 2008 in terms of the number of houses. Some of these job announcements have people interested in what's going on the housing space, and so love to highlight, and whether it's Berrien or Elkhart or Marshall or St. Joe, there's a lot of neat things. We've sent you downtown Mishawaka a few times as well for the riverfront redevelopment over there. You've seen the Avalon and
the Avalon is up and running.
Mill, and now Mill 2 and Avalon 2.
The Mill is full.
So, yeah.
I mean, who would have thought of that? The first time we went out to the Mill, we
Yeah.
interviewed Mayor Wood there.
Yeah.
And I don't think the Mill was completed yet. And that was not that long ago.
Right.
In that short space of 3 or 4 years, you've seen that park completely renovated, ironworks built.
Yeah.
The skating experience, the wintertime experience, making it a full season community and a full season resource for the community. Mayor Wood put it, I believe his line was, this is where people used to come get their paycheck. This is now a place they can come hang out and spend some of their paycheck. And I thought that was a fair statement.
Yeah.
It still is a vibrant, the redevelopment down there, and I think that really is a testament. I talk about you and your time at Mishawaka, but it wasn't so long ago that was an industrial wasteland.
Right. Yep, it sure was.
It really was.
And 2 million square feet of buildings there, and really I wonder if could we ever get it out of the way and redevelop it. And it's been neat to see it. For me, my entire professional career has been the evolution of those industrial buildings to where it is today. And now 700 plus residential units either completed or under construction or planned for that area. It's so neat to see how many people meet or expand down there. So when you start putting all this together and you think of, you touched on Madison Lifestyle District, we talked about downtown Mishawaka, you mentioned Benton Harbor and some of the renovations that are happening up there, Niles and Plymouth and Culver and on and on. We've had a chance to tell a lot of great stories and highlight some of the great projects happening in those areas. It's been fun. I want to switch for a second because we've had a transportation focus a few times through the years. We have planes and trains and automobiles a little bit, and we've tried to send you on on wayward adventures on that. And I haven't been able to get you to take advantage of my one-way tickets, so you always demand round trip. I don't know. So let's talk about that. You've been out to South Bend Airport or cover South Shore. Talk a little bit about those two and why those two are such important drivers to our economy.
Right, yeah. When you talk about the airport, I've always felt that the airport is such an important part of that regional economy. Whether it was a few years back when we did an episode on Project Propel, or this year when we went out and looked at potential expansion of the terminal and some of the thought patterns there, and new staff that are out there, new leadership. Of course, Mike Daigle is still, driving the bus and doing a great job. But the plane. But South Bend International Airport, my apologies, is such a big part of our local economy and has thrived, I feel like. Every year we go out there, they've got visions, they've got ideas, and we've seen those ideas implement and come into practice, and they've made it a more vital and important route. My family, and I know yours as well, relies on it. If we can avoid driving to Chicago to fly, we do. And so I think that there's more to come.
Yeah,
and
I think that's what's got me really excited. Some terminal improvements that are going to make that customer experience better. Right now we're watching the tarmac get and some of the, I don't know what you call it, the aprons and different things are getting built. Those are expensive things to do. There's a new car wash, rental car facility out there, and so there's a lot of great projects happening out there. We just recently did South Shore here near the end of the year. The South Shore celebrated the completion of the double track. There's still some talk about improvements here. Mention South Shore real fast.
Yeah, I mean, South Shore is a unique community asset, always has been, and we know the statistics show that the hardest part of its existence, at least from the passenger side. You know, many don't know the South Shore is both a commuter line, but it also has a freight component. Not the type of freight that you would see on the Norfolk Southern line with container upon container, because it's just not possible on the South Shore with electric lines above. But there's, you know, it does dual function for our regional economy. But, you know, from Michigan City to South Bend has always been a challenge. You know, the running gripe is you can see South Bend Airport, but you're 20 minutes away from getting off the train there, which is a unique challenge. So we know that the double track project is almost complete, I believe.
It's open, yeah, complete, done, open now,
To the west of us.
Yep.
But that we still have some challenges here in and around the airport. But I believe that there is, you know, a significant amount of support for keeping the station at the airport and completing the double track all the way to South Bend to make sure that it is a vibrant connector to the communities to the west of us. And I don't just mean Chicago. I mean, there's a lot of communities between here and there that could benefit from that connection, and South Bend could also benefit, or our region even. And like you said, having it at the airport provides access to rental cars, it provides access to a lot of different support facilities that the South Shore would need. But you know, it's always an interesting show to talk about the South Shore, just because it's such a unique asset.
Sure, yeah, it's terrific, an asset many communities don't have. As we're starting to wind down, we've got a lot still to talk about. So you can't talk about anything on the economy without mentioning Notre Dame. And so I think a couple key ones that I really enjoyed this year in the studio, talking about commercialization at Notre Dame, and then we also did cover the 3MT competition out at Notre Dame, where you went into the laboratory and talked out there. Mention just your experiences on campus with shows like that.
Well, so let's start with 3MT, because that was probably one of the most unique shows I've ever done.
Yeah.
That young lady was extremely impressive. She was a graduate student at the University of Notre Dame, and she was able to explain this extremely complicated scientific process that she was working on, and it reminded me of one of the things that we struggle with as a region, and that is retaining that top talent. And so when you look at the rest of the shows, I feel like the rest of the shows are all about creating a community where someone like that young lady would be extremely happy to stay here and could find success and satisfaction in our community. And I don't know that we're there yet, but we're getting there. Right. I think we're making major strides. The other one on the commercialization, we're seeing the University of Notre Dame step up and really become a community partner. Recently, they've announced a major investment in downtown South Bend, which is the type of major influence that our cities need. And so it's great to see, you know, the scanner that we saw on that episode could be revolutionary.
Right.
I mean, it's
in the treatment of breast cancer.
In the treatment of breast cancer, it is literally, you walk in and just a quick wave of the wand, and they've got markers that can potentially tell you if you are at risk or if you've got issues. And for the fight against cancer, I think that's huge. And so those are the types of things that you would really, that are speak to the mission of Notre Dame and what it brings to our community.
Yeah, it's interesting. We get in our last 3 minutes or so. I think of some big projects that we didn't necessarily get a chance to touch on this year, but maybe on our agenda for the future. So recently, our region has had some terrific announcements. Microsoft doing a project in LaPorte County, a major investment. Microsoft has bought some land in St. Joe County to do a major project. AWS has announced an $11 billion project in St. Joseph County. GM has announced a $3.5–4 billion project in St. Joe County. The Amazon project in Elkhart County is back up and running. It should be open next year. So as we head into our next season, boy, there's a lot of excitement about projects, and I think a lot of opportunity to help our viewers get a chance to see firsthand and learn more about those projects.
I hope so. I will tell you that I think that you just hit on not only a greatest hits wish list, but kind of a triumvirate between Amazon, Microsoft, and GM of dream investment. You know, there are communities across the country that would die for one of those three entities to make a major investment. We have three of them looking to make not just an investment, but for instance, the Amazon project is the largest investment in Indiana history.
By 3+ times,
Yes.
right? Yeah,
I mean,
pretty significant. Yeah.
It's, you know, we talk about South Bend being an old company town and the loss of Studebaker and how long it took to recover from that post-industrial situation to the future looks extremely bright for St. Joe County, which I think really speaks to the rest of the communities. Because as we said, we still are a regional economy.
It is, and it's interesting as we've been with those companies and they look at commuting patterns and stuff, they really are drawing from the broad region, the workforce programs in the region, and it's interesting because I hope our viewers see in the stories that we tell how all this sort of weaves together, right? So we've told a lot of quality place stories, a lot of housing stories, a lot of education stories, a lot of things about what's going on, and really we get this important role to help tell the stories of the community and show people that, and I think that helps with all of this, and I don't think we have some of those projects without all the other things that have been going on in recent years. So George, this has been great to catch up with you. Thank you for the good work that you've done.
Same for you,
Big
Jeff.
thanks to the WNIT team here who's been phenomenal to work with as well too. That's it for our show today. On behalf of the entire team here at WNIT PBS Michiana, we want to thank you for watching on WNIT or listening to our podcast. To watch this episode again or any of our past episodes, you can find Economic Outlook at WNIT.org or find our podcast on most major podcast platforms. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. I'm Jeff Ray. I'll see you next time.
This WNIT local production has been made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.